everyone. I am Barbara Ash, National Director of the Veteran Institute for Procurement, and we are so glad you're here with us today. And we're thrilled to launch the 2026 Continuing Education Workshop Series. These sessions are built specifically for veteran business owners like you who are ready to dive deep into the opportunities within today's GSA landscape. Over 4 sessions, we will explore one powerful theme. All roads lead to GSA. Whether your business is just getting started in the federal sector or you're ready to scale, understanding how to navigate the GSA landscape can be a game changer. And we have assembled an incredible lineup of experts who are going to share their insights, strategies, and insider knowledge you need to succeed. This workshop series is brought to you by the Veteran Institute for Procurement in partnership with the United States Small Business Administration. It's an extended training benefit for VIP grads, current applicants, and any veteran small business owner looking to maximize their full contracting potential with the federal government. And for those new to VIP or considering one or more of our programs, here's a summary of what we offer. VIP provides 6 specialized training curriculums designed to give veteran-owned small businesses the competitive edge they need to compete and win. These programs focus specifically on federal procurement, the Start, Grow, and Advance, that take you from foundational federal contracting knowledge to advanced strategies for sustained growth. We also offer 3 sector-specific programs: aerospace and international markets, which accelerate your success in these business areas, plus our newest offering, VIP Corporate, which focuses on breaking into or scaling in the private sector. All programs are offered at no cost to veteran entrepreneurs. We're currently accepting applications for all 6 programs, and we have a full training calendar for 2026. We have 3 START classes scheduled to take place in March, April, and June, plus a GROW class in March. If you've already completed a START or GROW and you're ready for that next level, we still have spots available for VIP Advance, which takes place February 10th through 12th, and then our VIP International, June 9th through 11th, and VIP Corporate will take place this coming May. These 3 programs are only offered once a year, the sector-specific ones, and applications are reviewed on a first-come, first-served basis. But don't wait. After the session, head to nationalvip.org to apply and secure your spot. We'd love to see you in person at an upcoming class. Now, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our first speaker, someone who brings a truly unique perspective to today's topic. Sam Lee runs his own law office in Fairfax, Virginia, where he advises clients on federal procurement regulations with a special focus on SBA programs. He's also the voice behind GovCon Intelligence, a widely read newsletter on small business contracting. Now, here's what makes Sam exceptional. He's the only one of 2 people to have ever served as SBA's Director of Procurement Policy. And in that role, he was principal drafter of the government's small business contracting regulations. Before that, he served as Deputy Associate General Counsel for Procurement and Law at the SBA. And he litigated cases before the Office of Hearings and Appeals and the Government Accountability Office and other venues. And he is currently co-chair of the American Bar Association Small Business Committee. So as you can see, you are in excellent hands. We encourage you to engage throughout this presentation. Feel free to submit your questions anytime using the Q&A box on your Zoom toolbar. Please don't use the chat for questions. Use the Q&A box. And we'll address as many questions as we can during the session, and we'll follow up on any we don't get to. And please note that the slides and audio presentations will be emailed at the completion of the four-part webinar series. And now it is my pleasure and honor to welcome Sam and turn it over to you, Sam. Thank you again.
Thank you, Barbara. Thanks so much for the opportunity to present. Thank you to VIP and to Brian Mauricio, also on the call, for getting me involved and running this session. It's really a treat to talk with you here at the beginning of the new year. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope everybody had a great holiday. But this is my first opportunity to talk to basically people outside my family in 2026. And I'm going to use this opportunity to go through a lot of the new data that has come out from the federal procurement data system from sam.gov. That data closes for the fiscal year January 1. So in the last maybe 4 days or so, I've been combing through that data to try to find some information that's useful to you all. And this is my very first opportunity to talk about it. Um, as we're going through, I've even found new things that have come out since I prepared the slides for this presentation. So I'm going to follow up with an article at my website. There'll be a QR code that you'll see that we can put up there, and then we can go through on that. So we can get started with the slideshow if and while we're doing that. I'll just say hi again from Fairfax, Virginia. Barbara was very kind to go through my bio there. I am wearing an orange and blue tie to represent my alma mater, University of Virginia, which had kind of a tough December. They were in the running for the college football playoff, but then lost in the ACC championship and had to settle for Jacksonville, Florida. So no offense to anybody from Jacksonville, but I think they would have rather been in the playoff rather than going to the Gator Bowl. But if anybody's still alive, your school's still alive in the college football playoff, congratulations to those of you from, I guess, Oregon, Indiana. Indiana looks really good. And then, is it Ole Miss? And there's one more that I'm missing that I'm sure somebody will remind me of. All right, thank you. All right, so we can go to the next one. And the website for the URL for my website is govconintelligence.com. And there is a URL. We have 1,600 subscribers. And I'm going to bring you up-to-date analysis, including maybe right after this call, to tell you all the things that I got wrong in this presentation. Next slide. Okay, I did have some fun with this presentation. The theme of all roads lead to GSA is not a new concept in federal contracting. So we'll be going over this idea that it's really going back to the future, going back to those of you who've seen the movie back to 1985. I'm a child of the 80s, so I probably have seen this movie over 100 times. And I tried to make some ties between the movie and what's going on here, and then I sort of just decided you know what? I really love Back to the Future and Marty McFly and the DeLorean, so I'm just gonna put stills from the movie into this presentation, regardless of whether they actually relate to what we're talking about. But the general idea is, yes, this is not a new concept of going back to GSA, leading to GSA. We have an executive order that's similar to other directives that have come out in previous administrations. The FAR overhaul is new. It's not something that's been done before, but some of the policy changes are reflecting back on ideas that have come out before. We'll also go over some of the pressure on value-added resellers. That's a very large segment of the veteran-owned small business community, and then talk a bit about some of the trends that we saw for 2025, including the data that I've been looking over for the last week. Next slide. And here are the topics. We'll go through each one of these, including the review of the 2025 results. And so 2025, you remember at the beginning of the movie, Marty McFly is playing with his guitar inside Doc Brown's garage, and he tunes it up to 11 at least on there. So the initial data from FY25 shows that the government awarded $192 billion to small business. Now, I'll explain here a bit and further on my website why I think the number is actually lower. But if that number holds, that's the number that's in SAM.gov right now, that will extend a long-running streak that goes all the way back to 2015 of the government essentially adding $10 billion every single year from 90 to 100, 110, 20, 30, 40, all the way down to 190. So again, assuming this number holds, uh, the government still is keeping up its commitment to small business well over the 23% goal and actually increasing every single year. So this is the industry to be in. I've been in this industry now for a long time at SBA, but fairly new in the private sector as of last year. And I've recognized that we're continuing to grow in terms of at least expanding the uh, pie of dollars available to companies. There is some contraction in the number of companies that are participating. You can see that in the vendor count, the number of companies that have prime contracts with the federal government, but the pie of money continues to grow. So you are in the right industry. Now, the big story coming out of the 2025 data is the growth of the 8A program. However way you cut it, the 8A program set a new record in 2025 in terms of dollars. Now, that's surprising. There was a lot of pressure and scrutiny on the 8A program for 2025. The SBA announced a full-scale audit. There was a YouTube video that made the rounds of an 8A contractor that disclosed to a reporter pass-through scheme, and that led to further investigations. Department of Treasury announced an investigation. SBA has asked all 8A companies to submit 13 sets of documents as part of an audit. They have to submit that by January 19th, which, by the way, is a federal holiday. So if you are in that group, you probably want to submit a bit before that because otherwise you're not going to get any help on that federal holiday, January 19th, that you're supposed to respond. But despite all of those pressures, the 8A program continued to grow and set a new record for 2025. Now, the data that you see on your screen is what I pulled at the end of last week. On that day, January 2nd, which was Friday, one of the agencies that had major 8A spending actually reversed almost $20 billion worth of contracts, $19 billion worth of contracts. So the that number still holds, $45.8 billion, but I'll explain on GovCon Intelligence why the real number is probably more like 25.5, 25.6. So it's still a record. It's above last year's spending, but it's not as much as 45. It looks like State Department might have made some errors in entering its data toward the end of the year with end of the year spending. But the 8A program was up. Small business, if that number holds, was up for 2025. So you're continuing to see those two programs grow over time. Big surprise there from the 8A program, despite all the scrutiny. Now, is that going to extend through 2026? We'll have to wait and see. There is some talk about agencies suspending the sole source part of the program because of concerns about fraud and about the program being DEI related. Now, I wrote on my website, GovCon Intelligence, that the actual fraud in the 8A program that's been confirmed is actually very low. I calculated it at $22,000. So you want to learn more about that, just go to GovCon Intelligence. So uh, as important to this group, another big goal of the federal government is supporting service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, and that has been consistently performed over more than the last decade. So every year since 2012, the federal government has met the goal for contracting with service-disabled vet-owned businesses. That ended in 2025. For uh, all the years before 2024, the goal was 3%. The government had met that since 2012. The goal went up to 5% in 2024. The government met that last year, but it looks like it's going to dip back this year to somewhere around 4.7, 4.8 once the final numbers come in. And the government will fail to miss that goal. I don't have an explanation in this slide deck, but we'll talk a bit about value-added resellers. And it seems like the reason, if you're curious, the reason that the government did not meet the 5% goal is because of the reduction in the use of value-added resellers. That's a very large segment of the service-able vet-owned market, much more so than in the 8A program and among small businesses overall. And that pressure, that downward pressure on value-added resellers affected the goal attainment for service-able vet-owned businesses overall. And actually, if you look at all the agencies, the three top agencies that work with service-able vet-owned businesses are the VA, Defense, and Homeland Security. All three of those reduced their usage of SDVOSBs in 2025. So there was no bright spot among agencies in the top three among SDVOSBs. Another interesting aspect of the data is the use of category management and best in class. You've probably been hearing about category management for quite some time. It's a program that started in 2014, actually. And there's been thoughts over the last maybe 5 years, the category management was going to take over. Everybody needs to go to these large government-wide contracts, things like VETS or STARS or Oasis, Alliant, Polaris, that these were going to be the one-stop shop for all government contracting. And it did look for at least the past 4 or 5 years that category management was making additional inroads into agency buying. At the agency where I used to work, the Small Business Administration, they moved much of their buying to category management platforms, including the GSA schedule. Category management took a step back in 2025. You can see the red in that top right-hand corner for best in class. That means the government did not meet its goal for working with best in class contracts and with the companies that are designated as best in class on those contracts. It's actually the lowest amount spent on, or lowest percentage spent on best in class contracts in 3 years. The government missed its goal by quite a significant margin. The goal was 13.6, and they got to 12.12. You can also see on some of the other ones that spend under management did not meet its goal. Cost avoidance did not meet its goal. Training is really not that significant, but at least on all the goals for category management, the government did not meet that. So it seems like 2025 was the year of taking a step back from this long-running trend of increasing use of best-in-class contracts and category management, general consolidation. So as we look into the industry specifically, what was good and what was not so good for small business utilization? At the very top were facilities and construction. And that I think contributes to why the 8A program set another record. There are a lot of construction companies in the 8A program. HubZone, at least according to the preliminary data, seem to have done well. And there are a lot of construction companies in the HubZone program as well. Office management is another area where small businesses did particularly well as compared to the prior year in 2025. But on the flip side, there were some industries that made a decline. And you can see here that at the very top is IT and information communication technology services had the sharpest declines as compared to last year. And that covers a lot of serviceable vet-owned firms or a lot of SDVOSB technology firms. So you can see there again that the pressure government-wide among value-added resellers, IT companies, kept the government from reaching that 5% goal in 2025. A couple of categories there, medical, another area where veteran-owned businesses have a significant foothold, but that took a step back in 2025 as well. By the way, you can find all this information. These are just screenshots. These are not graphs that I made. You can find all this information if you go to GSA's Data to Decisions tool. That's I think it's at d2d.gsa.gov. All right, so we've done the 2025 data overview. Now I'm going to look at the policies that led to this idea that all roads lead to GSA. You're going to hear a lot more about this over the course of the multiple sessions that we have. Jeff Kosis is coming on to talk about his perspective from inside GSA. But my general idea here is we really are going back to the future. Going back to, if you remember the movie, he set it for 1985. He wants to set it just back a few minutes. Should I spoil the movie? I don't know. Does everybody seen the movie? But there, somehow he doesn't quite make it to 1985 initially. There's a bit of a hiccup as he goes through. Okay, the consolidation policy is an executive order that was issued by the president to direct agencies to consolidate common goods and services through GSA. It's Executive Order 14240. And I like to call it the Make GSA Great Again order because it says in the text, it says it's to return GSA to its original purpose from the 1940s to eliminate waste and save dollars. And that executive order also allows GSA to take over alternative IT vehicles. That includes NASA SOUP, CIO, SP4. That has not happened yet. It gives GSA the authority to do so. I imagine that Jeff Kostis might be able to give some insight on that, but there may be some negotiations that are going on with those agencies for GSA to look into whether it can take over the other IT vehicles that it does not currently control. All of that is in 14240. And I'll note that there are already some agencies that have consolidated with GSA. There are two that have been identified publicly, SBA and OPM. And then there are a few that the GSA Associate Administrator has said are in discussions with GSA to get their contracting of common goods and services taken over by GSA. We'll talk a bit more about that later on the slide deck. Oh, I went just a bit too far. So, why is this going back to the future? You can actually go all the way back to the 18th century and find other examples of the federal government seeking to consolidate procurement. Alexander Hamilton, my kid's favorite musical character, created an office of the purveyor of public supplies back in 1795 and eventually had to move away from that, even with the government being as small as it was at that time. Franklin Delano Roosevelt created a procurement division at Treasury in 1933 and consolidated procurement there. At one point, the GSA had oversight over all of information technology within the government. That was under the Brooks Automated Data Processing Act of 1965, which was eventually reversed in the Klinger-Cohen Act. So you can see this cycle, the pendulum swings back and forth from consolidation to deconsolidation, back to consolidation, and we're currently at the apex of that cycle in trying to consolidate once again with GSA. Okay, we're gonna take a poll question here and see how do you think this is gonna work out? Uh, so will this time be different? Now, seen it from 1795 to FDR to even the 1960s, but will this time be different? Will we finally be able to keep the consolidation at GSA? Yes or no? And then you can give part of a reason. Is it because of politics or leadership? The presidential leadership or the leadership at GSA? GSA just recently confirmed a new administrator who comes from private industry. Or if it's yes or no, is it because of something other than politics or government leadership, things in industry, maybe the advent of AI or economic pressures, this pressure on affordability or abundance or whatever term that you'd like to use. I'd be interested to see what everybody thinks. Will this time trying consolidation be different? Give you a moment to, we have about 220 people, so we'll see, maybe get at least half of you to vote on the poll on will this time be different. And give you a second to get in there. So at this point in the movie, he's in the DeLorean. He somehow shifted something while he was going down. I don't think he realized that you have to get up to 88 miles per hour. So he's shifting back and forth, and then the DeLorean disappears, and somehow he's in an unknown place and time. Okay. I wonder if we can get the poll results. Oh wow, we're almost evenly split. This is amazing. This is the best result I've ever seen. The winner by a very small margin is with 28% no because of politics or leadership. But very close in second place with 25% is yes because of politics and leadership. And then even if you add the yes or no, they're basically the same. You have 48% yes and then 52% no. So um, I should put this up on FanDuel and see how we do. Or what's the new one, Kalshi? If you can, we can put up whether consolidation is going to work this time around. See if I can get that up on Kalshi. Thanks everybody for participating in the poll, and we will go to the executive order on the FAR overhaul about policy. The FAR overhaul, you've been hearing about this for over 6 months now. The executive order that pushed it off was 14275, April 2025. And it talked about transforming an onerous bureaucracy into a streamlined set of essential regulations. So at that time, I was still in government, so I guess I was part of that onerous bureaucracy. I didn't feel like I was being particularly onerous, but the executive order seemed to say I was. And the streamlined set of essential regulations that's actually done now on the FAR overhaul. They were able to complete the FAR overhaul draft by October of 2025. And the streamlining, if you're wondering, how much were they going to streamline? Were they going to streamline 50%, 10%, 25%? Well, the answer is the streamlining was 20%. The new FAR is 20% shorter than the old FAR. Now, I'll just say, as an outside observer of the FAR overhaul, that along with the FAR overhaul, they also released a bunch of additional materials. There's a companion guide, which is in PDF. There's practitioners' albums. They're not all in one place. You have to link back and forth. But I kind of wonder if you add together all the pages of all these supplemental materials, do you get that extra 20%? So in other words, it's just shifting stuff around from a PDF to like websites and stuff. I don't know. I think there's a good cottage industry for somebody just to take all that stuff and put it into PDF and add it to the FAR overhaul, and then you get everything together. The the general concept was to streamline the FAR to provisions that are required by statute or essential to sound procurement. I don't know that that really happened. There's a few things in there that I'd say are not really required by statute, stuff like required use contracts in Part 12, but that's sort of outside the scope of this presentation. For those items that are not required by statute, the FAR overhaul establishes a 4-year sunset preference. So that means that the FAR overhaul is not quite done yet. It'll probably be done sometime this year, but it does mean that in 2030, we'll be talking about this all over again. So it gives me a chance to put stuff on my website and hawk my website again, GovCon Intelligence. I'll be able to cover all that come 2030. And then, maybe there'll be a Back to the Future 4 by then. We can make some jokes about that. The overall FAR is available online at acquisition.gov/FAR overhaul. One area that is significant for this presentation for GSA is overhauled FAR Part 8. That's the section that discusses required sources of supply. And if you've been in government contracting for more than 10 minutes, you've probably heard about 8.4. 8.4 is the section of the FAR that covers the GSA schedule. 8.4 doesn't exist anymore. 8.4 has now been moved to a separate manual. It's the GSA regulation manual or the GSAM. And that's a separate document as well. So that's another one that you would have to add in if you're trying to get back that 20%. Another aspect of the overhauled Part 8 is that initially it was going to require the agencies use best-in-class contracts whenever those were available. So those are contracts like the VETS contract, 8A Stars, Alliant, Polaris, Oasis, those big multi-agency IDIQ contracts. There was a big hubbub about that. There's a lot of criticism. I was among the chorus of people saying this is really going to cut back on the industrial base because there are lots of small businesses, in fact, 95% of small businesses that are not receiving work through best-in-class contracts. And lo and behold, the FAR overhaul reversed its decision to mandate the use of best-in-class. So now the FAR says that agencies must use so-called required use contracts. That still is a form of consolidation. We expect that required use will somehow come out of GSA because that seems to be where all the multi-agency IDIQ contracts come from. Maybe not, we'll see. But we do not have a identification of what required use contracts are yet. That is coming in the future and it'll come through a directive from the White House. Agencies must use required use contracts and they should consider other government-wide contracts. They should use those contracts like Oasis and Polaris and Alliant and the such. Oh, now Marty's walking down the street in Hill Valley. Remember, there used to be a mall here when he took off from 1985, and now he's in the middle of a pine tree farm. So at this point in the stills, I've kind of moved away from trying to link the picture from the movie to the subject. So I guess he's looking for where the money goes. The topic here is where the money goes. So GSA schedule was the big emphasis in the FAR overhaul. Obviously, a big emphasis for GSA. GSA charges a fee. We'll be talking about that. So a lot of the funding for the Federal Acquisition Service for GSA comes out of the GSA schedule. And this graph goes to 2016. I actually went all the way back to 1997 in my recent data exploration to see how the GSA schedule has progressed over time. And if you go all the way back to 1997, every single year since 1997, the GSA schedule has added more and more dollars. So it's grown every single year, dollar-wise, from 1997 to 2024, and then 2025, that stopped. 2025 was the first ever year that, at least based on the data, I mean, I think the GSA schedule predates GSA. It goes all the way back to 1920s, but they're not records going back to that. It's the first ever year based on the data that the GSA schedule lost money as compared to the previous, well, not lost money, but it went down as compared to the previous year. So you can see a pretty sizable drop over $1.5 billion less in 2025 as compared to 2024. Why is that? Well, you have to read on my website, GovCon Intelligence. I'll give you a hint. Agencies have different priorities than trying to use the GSA schedule, and I'll write more about that in our article upcoming. So even though the total schedule went down, the amount spent on small business continued to increase up to $18.1 billion, and the amount spent on veteran-owned businesses continued to increase as well. And I think part of that is because GSA schedule is primarily, well, it's all commercial vehicle. You have to use fixed price. You can't use cost contracts on GSA. It has to be commercial items. So small businesses, veteran-owned businesses are the biggest players in that space. And so their spending continues to go up on GSA schedule, despite the overall trend of, or the overall uh, issue of GSA decreasing in 2025. Same if you look at multi-agency contracts. So now we're adding in the GWACs like Oasis, Alliant, Polaris. That went down in 2025 as well, and that's the first decrease in recent history in the use of multi-agency contracts. So you've probably been hearing this theme, and I've said it as well. I'm as guilty as anybody, saying, "Oh, well, the government's consolidating. The policy says they're consolidating. That's what the executive orders say. You have to get on these vehicles." Seems like in 2025 that was not the case. It was not the case that you necessarily have to get on these vehicles. That trend may reverse in 2026 as agencies start to internalize these policies and things go back to a more regular order. Remember, 2025 was the year of Doge cuts. It was the year of the DRP and the fork on the federal government personnel side. So 2025 was a strange year. It may go back to increasing trends in 2026, but at least for 2025, it was not actually the case that you had to be on these vehicles in order to get work. The amount going through federal supply schedule is actually less than you might think. It's about 7% of total federal contracting, and that's stabilized over the last few years at about 7%. So it's not, as you might think, based on hearing the recommendations, a huge, significant percentage of federal contracting. Now, for veteran-owned and small business, it is a big deal. I think I have a slide coming up on that. But for overall federal contracting, it's just about that 70%. So why aren't agencies using the schedule more? There's a few reasons. One of them, Guy Timberlake's been great about discussing this class deviation 2014 00011, where at least the Department of Defense, they do not use GSA's price analysis. Defense has to make a separate determination that the price is fair and reasonable. So that limits some of the use of defense on the GSA schedule. There are competing vehicles out there, at least for now. NASA Soup is said to have lower fees, more data analytics, and you can get new products on NASA Soup faster than you can on the GSA schedule. That may change if NASA Soup moves over to GSA, it becomes GSA Soup or something. But at least now, Soup offers some features that the GSA schedule does not. And just mentioned, there's not a cost plus flexibility on the schedule. You have to use a per unit cost or a fixed price on the GSA schedule. Okay. The cost of doing business, consolidation of contracting at GSA. So here, Marty's in given away in 1955 now in Hill Valley. He goes to a diner, and there is Biff Tannen. Biff, one of the best characters in all of 1980s film. It still comes up a lot, Biff Tannen, as an example of the big bully from the 1980s movies. So, as a guy who came from the Small Business Administration, just think to yourself, who does Sam think is the big bully in federal contracting? All right. Uh, Agencies were directed to consolidate their what they call common spending with GSA. This came through a memo from Russ Voigt, the director of the Office of Management Budget, in July. I'll just tell you a bit about what common spend means. Every purchase has something called a PSC, product service code, and there's, I think, thousands of product service codes, and they're all split up into um, overall 20 categories, but then you go into two categories. One is defense-centric spend, and the other is common spend. You can find all this on GSA's category management website. And common spend is essentially stuff that's not defense specific. There are some agencies besides defense that use defense spend. Their defense obviously uses common spend, things like facilities and IT and medical. But the idea is to split all spending up into defense spend and common spend. So like an agency like SBA or OPM that is civilian, doesn't do any serious defense related activities, is going to be using almost entirely common spend PSCs. So the directive from OMB is for agencies to consolidate their common spend with GSA. What this means is taking their 1102s and rather than using them at the agency, have those 1102s either go over to GSA or use GSA's existing 1102s. 1102 is the designation for contracting officers. So SBA, for example, who is already consolidated, is contracting with GSA. SBA does not have 1102s that sign orders and contracts from SBA. Instead, those are going to be GSA contracting officers that sign those orders and contracts. GSA, after this OMB memo, stood up a new office. It's called the Office of Centralized Acquisition Services, or OCAS. You can see the short ad for OCAS from GSA's website. It's centralized enterprise-wide acquisition model. And it says you can expand their contracting capacity, especially during periods of limited staffing, while streamlining procurement processes and accelerating delivery. Someone may need to ask GSA who you is and who there is in that sentence. But I think you is the agency, and there maybe is also the agency. I'm not quite sure what you're supposed to get out of that. But OCAS is going to be the office that takes over the work from SBA, OPM, and the other civilian agencies that are moving their acquisition to GSA in accordance with this OMB directive. So GSA has done this for quite some time. That's supposed to be the whole function of GSA. They do other agencies' procurements. And again, as we saw with the schedule, the amount of money that had been going to GSA to award on behalf of other agencies had been increasing and increasing and increasing over time, but it dropped in 2025. So the dollars on contracts where GSA acted as the awarding agency dropped from 27 billion to about 25 billion in 2025, meaning that agencies preferred to keep their contracts with their own agency rather than sending over to GSA. I think there's a really quick and easy reason for this, which is agencies were under pressure to award contracts quickly. Part of it is congressional budget cycle, maybe because of DOGE or the DRP, and sending their contracts over to GSA was probably a step that would take more time than the agency had necessary. There's some friction, initial friction in trying to send the contracts over to GSA because you have to enter into an assisted acquisition agreement with GSA. Negotiating that agreement takes time. Once agencies have that agreement negotiated, though, that friction is eliminated, and really the agencies have to worry about is the cost of the agreement. So this may return to form once agencies go into those assisted acquisition agreements. Okay, here was the slide I was thinking about before. On GSA assisted awards, the small business is slightly lower, 25% versus 28%. And actually, I think that 28% is a bit elevated. So it's basically the same GSA. When GSA awards, it uses small business about the same amount. It actually overperforms on veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owned. So the awards awarded by GSA are more likely, at least dollar-wise, to go to veteran-owned businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. So if it were just GSA assisted awards, actually the government would have met that 5% goal, 5.7% versus 4.7 overall. Oh, why don't agencies use GSA more so? Well, there are some costs involved in using GSA. There's the industrial funding fee if the award eventually goes on the GSA schedule. That's a fee borne by the contractor, but of course, the contractor is going to pass that on to the agency. Sometimes there's a specific line item on the contract for the industrial funding fee, and that's 0.75%. Additionally, the agency has to pay an assisted acquisition fee, which is a percentage of the contract cost. But we don't, they're interagency transactions, so we don't have a specific amount that we know of, but I've heard it as 2% or more than that, sometimes up to 5%. And then agencies have found as they've gone through this assisted acquisition process that even though GSA is the agencies that is signing off on the contracts and orders, agencies still have to maintain some acquisition staff. So, for example, at SBA actually had to bring back some of its acquisition staff to process the information that's going to GSA and to work with internal agency buyers, program officials to organize and structure the acquisitions before they went over to GSA. And those agencies may still be awarding a few of the contracts themselves too. Okay, I'm going to talk about value-added resellers. I did see a question in the chat about what is a value-added reseller. So, uh, someone else may want to see if they can answer that in the chat as well. But the way I see it is you are acting as a go-between between the original equipment manufacturer, which is oftentimes in this case an IT company, and the government. So you're packaging that product along with perhaps your services or outside services. Maybe you're packaging multiple products to sell to the government. Part of the idea behind it is that many OEMs will not work directly with the government. They prefer to go through resellers. They want to push the risk from themselves off to the reseller for compliance with contracts. And the reseller also provides marketing and business development services for the OEM. And then on the government side, the government may prefer to work with a reseller so that they have assistance in designing what their needs are. If they have additional services in addition to products that they need, the reseller can find those services. And then if their system design doesn't isn't specific to one OEM, the reseller may be able to package multiple items from multiple OEMs and put it into one contract for the government. So that's the value add in the reseller discussion. And the year has not started off well for value-added resellers. There's evidently, according to Federal News Network, a draft memo that is circulating around Department of Defense to cap reseller fees at 5%, at least on the GSA schedule. So this memo isn't public yet, so we don't know exactly what it says. But from the reporting, it sounds like DoD would put a 5% cap on GSA schedule IT reseller sales. There's some criticisms of that. I'll go through a bit about that, but this would be a monumental change for resellers to have some sort of cap on their fees in selling to DoD, their markups. And additionally, the government seems to have a preference now for going directly to some of the OEMs. GSA has entered into a OneGov initiative where they're seeking discounts from companies like Microsoft. Here's one for Microsoft, and they've put out things about working with some of the AI companies, OpenAI and Anthropic as well. So this OneGov initiative it seems to be targeted at pushing the reseller out of that middle position and going directly to the OEMs. One strange thing though about the Gov agreement, even though it seems like it is supposed to be detrimental to resellers, a lot of the agreements actually use a reseller, Carahsoft, that's come out in some GAO protests recently. It's actually gone through Carahsoft, which is a reseller, but not a small business, not a service-able veteran-owned business. So what do we make of this 5% markup cap proposal? One is if you are a reseller, that would require you to tell the government what your markup is. And those markups are proprietary pricing data that's usually considered confidential under the Federal Freedom of Information Act and other authorities, trade secrets, perhaps. It also ignores any value add that you have. Well, that 5% pays for stuff more than profit. It pays for the relationship with the government, the effort that the reseller puts into arranging products and services, and maybe even additional services on top of the product. So there is some value add to that value added reseller that the 5% doesn't account for. And then, as I mentioned, many OEMs prefer to work with value-added resellers and specifically with small businesses. There is a benefit in pushing the risk and the business development work and the marketing work off to a value-added reseller, and that may be actually worth more than the 5% that DoD is allegedly seeking as a cap. So, what do we make of this for 2026? What are the takeaways for 2026? Gosh, I jumped really far ahead in the movie, but here we are still in 1955, and Marty is playing at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. I always wanted my school dances to be like the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, and it happens to be that he has some family members that are in attendance at that dance. Gotta fix some stuff up in the space-time continuum, Marty does. Well, first is to understand what this consolidation mandate is. It's really two, but one's done. The FAR overhaul was one of them, and that's pretty much done except for the notice and comment section. And then the other is moving contracting to GSA. It's not happening all at once. SBA and OPM were quick out of the gate, but I don't think we've heard of other agencies moving. I know the associate administrator went on the radio saying there are other agencies that are in discussions, but I don't know that we've seen that publicized that other agencies have actually signed off on consolidating with GSA. So to the extent that it's happening fairly slowly. And even with the consolidation, agencies are, as SBA seems to has done with hiring back some of its contracting officers, creating some exceptions for mission-specific flexibility. Every agency is different. They have different priorities, different programs, and as we've seen with the pendulum going back and forth, GSA and consolidated acquisition agencies cannot handle all of the details that agencies need them to go through. And so agencies will take back some of the procurement authority from GSA. That's certain to happen one way or the other. The other thing to do is to watch those best in class contracts. When I was in government, best in class was the biggest thing on the horizon. And it seems strange because best in class, as you saw from the slides, it's only really about 15%, but it took up so much of the policy space and was such a big looming threat on the horizon for small businesses that we probably spent 85% of our time talking about how to get more small businesses involved in best in class, how to have SBA have insight into best in class. Uh, but as you saw in the slides, it's actually the first year that the government has not met its best in class goal. So best in class is perhaps even taking a back seat to some new designations, things like required use. This may be the year that we start talking about things other than best in class with respect to small business. But while we're doing that, under the executive order, two big best in class contracts, SOUP and CIOSP 4, which are at NASA and NIH respectively, might be moving. The executive order gave GSA the authority to take those over. That has not happened yet. That's a lot to move billions and billions of dollars in contracts from one agency to another and have all the relationships go over to GSA, have the management of the systems go. SOUP has a completely different system than GSA uses. And if the intent is to integrate those contracts into GSA's existing system, that's even more work, more money. And I'm not really sure what the savings would be for moving, say, SOUP over to the GSA system. So if they are moving, that's going to be a really long, expensive transition period. It's going to go through a number of procurement cycles. There'll be a lot of confusion in the middle of it. But think about that if you're looking on to partner with SOUP or CIOSP4. If they do move to GSA, there's going to be some uncertainty during the transition from one agency to another. It's going to be a big change. And then from a more specific note to your businesses, don't take your eye off the mission, sell the mission, especially if contracting moves to GSA. The marketing for your firm needs to focus primarily on the program office. GSA contracting officers are not going to be well versed in what the specific agency is buying. Say you're selling to, I don't know, EPA. They're not going to know precisely what EPA buys. It's going to be the EPA program office that knows that. That might not have been the case when the contracting was done at that agency, say an EPA contracting officer. They may know enough just being around the building to know what the agency buys. But if all of the contracting is going to move to GSA, the GSA contracting officer is really just going to be, pushing paper, kind of handling the acquisition aspects rather than the specific mission related aspects. So you're going to want to market to the program office and take advantage of the agency's small business offices, the Office of Small Business Programs or Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization. A lot of old Ozaboos are trying to switch to the other term, small business programs. Those are the individuals that will help you navigate this new world of the overhauled FAR and the consolidation of GSA, and they'll be able to give you contact points of who to talk to. They also often keep vendor lists so you can see so you can put your name on the vendor list and be considered for new market research opportunities. And then one point that I'll make in my article that's coming up is you really need to minimize the distance between mission and execution, which is basically just speed everything up. Do as much as you can to speed things up, and that's including using different authorities to get into agencies. That might be SBIR Phase 3, 8A sole source. I think that's the reason the 8A program is setting records. If there's a sole source opportunity, maybe you're working with VA from a service able vet perspective, you can use a sole source opportunity there. Or there's a couple new authorities that are out there. There's the CSO, which is Commercial Solutions Opening. There are a few agencies that use that. GSA, DHS use that. And there's OTAs, which are other transaction authority. Those are used a lot by defense and by NASA. So if you have the opportunity to use those different authorities, OTAs, CSOs, SBIR Phase 3, that's going to minimize that distance to execution, make things faster for agencies. And if there's anything that I can get out of the 2025 data, it's that agencies want to move as fast as possible. And now I'm happy to take any questions. I'm going to go through the question and answer, and feel free to put more questions into the question and answer box. I do have a final slide that I'll go to, which is the favorite scene from the movie where he's taken off from 1955, but we'll go back to the question slide.
Oh, thank you, Sam, for that incredible presentation and great information and some aha moments in there. Like you said, some surprises, but
Absolutely.
I'm a big believer in data, follow the data, and so it is very telling, but also a bit perplexing and has some questions as to where we're going in 2026 as well, but some great advice as to what to watch for and some of the whys. Thank you so much. And now we do have questions in the Q&A, and I encourage everyone to, if you're, if you have a question, please submit it in the Q&A box. And I'll go ahead and read some of those, Sam, or if you, I know you can see it as well. Um, and then I just wanted to again thank you for sharing all that great data.
Of course.
One here that I know you talked about, it says so it costs 2.75% to do business with GSA. That was one of the questions there. There is a
Sure. If
cost
you
to do business, right? With GSA.
Yeah, I mean, if you add together the 0.75%, which is paid by the firm, with the 2% that's paid by the agency, you do get to 2.75%. It's probably even more because that 2% is a floor for agencies. It might be able to go up as high as 5%. But, from the business perspective, if you think about it, that's not very much. If you sell on Amazon, they're probably taking 10% or more through commercial sellers. So 2% for GSA is not a huge amount of money. I mean, even I accept credit card, by the way, at my law firm, Stanley Law, and I have to pay a 3% fee to accept credit cards on that. So 2% is a lot in terms of the amount of money that's going through GSA. We're talking about billions of dollars. So that ends up being hundreds of millions of dollars that go to GSA through that fee. But as far as a cost of doing business, not a huge amount.
Yeah. One of the first questions we had was trying to just locate, a license. He, as a CDLA license holder vet, I researched the GSA schedule and couldn't find any opportunities for drivers, for VIP congressional members. I guess he's looking or she's looking forward to finding the GSA contracting officer for a type of schedule in general, do you have any good advice for how do you locate, where they're buying something on GSA? Is there a
Yeah,
good tool?
that's a great question, and there are a lot of resources out there on it. One place I would start is the GSA e-library. You can just go
Mhm.
online and that's a good search box, and you probably look in black car and see what comes out, see if there are other companies that are offering that. But one site that I really like to go to search for opportunities is USA Spending because you can see there all the contracts that have been awarded in the past. So you can see what agencies are buying what you're selling. SAM.gov is the source for federal opportunities. Additionally, once you find what agency is buying what you're selling, you should reach out to the agency OSDBU there, the Small Business Program Office, and see if you can get on a vendor list or go to some presentations, maybe meet people in person to understand how to work with that agency. Every agency is a little bit different, and they have different ways of working with small businesses, different events that you're recommended to attend. I mean, one thing I would warn, it sounds like this person is fairly new to the idea of federal contracting. One thing I would warn everybody who's just starting out is a really long cycle. I mean, you may start talking to somebody today, and it may be end of 2026, beginning of 2027 before you actually have money in your pocket. So you just have to set that expectation that the cycle is probably going to be longer than you're used to if you're mostly doing commercial selling.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that good guidance. Another question here. What happens when they miss their goal? There were a few goals that
Right.
changed, and so it's not specific to one, but yeah, what are the consequences or what happens?
So, it was first time since 2011 that the federal government will have missed the service-able vet goal. So we don't have a recent history to say what it is. I do recall at one point the VA was, I don't know if they were going to miss their goal or no, they got a poor grade on the SBA scorecard. I think they got a D on the SBA scorecard. So there are a few hearings about the VA's performance on the SBA scorecard. So you expect that congressional members would see the decrease in the service-able vet spending and start wanting answers, particularly, I would think, from the VA, because the VA is by far the largest buyer from service-able vet-owned firms. There was some reporting earlier in the year that the Doge cuts for whatever reason, I'm sure people in the audience know better than I do. Those cuts specifically targeted VA, which means that service-able vet firms lost a lot of work because of the Doge terminations. And you can see there the result in the numbers, not just the VA decreasing its spending with service-able vet-owned firms, but the federal government overall missing that 5% goal. And again, the first
Yeah.
miss since 2011.
Yeah, and that kind of addresses one of the questions that someone had as well. How did the Doge and policy changes impact, some of the goaling? And you did a good job of kind of outlining how that can impact and how that could correct itself in 2026 as things settle down, right?
Yeah, and 2025 was a weird year. I'd recommend anybody who wants to learn more about how the Doge cut out agency by agency
Mhm.
to look at Ben Brunges' LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Brunges, Brunges. He's a professor at University of Washington. He's done a great job of really diving into the Doge data to see what agencies were most affected by it. And so
Mhm.
I think part of the reason that you see service stable vet contracting down is because of Doge's focus on VA, DHS as well. That's the number three agency for working with
Mhm.
service stable vet owned firms. And you may have heard at DHS, there's a
Yeah.
policy that new contracts have to go up to the
Yeah.
secretary.
And you mentioned the value, the VARs. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another pressure as well. There are a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
VARs in the SDVO, SBA
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then here's a question. I know it's on a lot of minds here. With all the current scrutiny on the 8A program by the current administration, do you think it's still a valuable set aside to pursue for small businesses that qualify for the program, given the preparation costs and now the scrutiny, right?
Yeah,
What
so
do you?
it's yes and no. I mean, we still see in the data that the 8A program is stronger than ever, set record numbers. That's the only program that has this fast track sole source authority. If you're service able vet, you can get that just at the VA, but this is 8A, across the whole government. They have that fast track sole source authority. So the authorities in the 8A program are still very valuable. Agencies are using them. What I would warn a company that's thinking about getting the 8A program is because of the scrutiny and the audit specifically, the resources at SBA have shifted first from 8A to service able vet. I'll write about that on GovCon Intelligence, but also from working on 8A applications to working on the 8A audit. So previously, you might be able to apply to the 8A program and get a response in a few months. I don't think you can expect that anymore. I don't even know that 8A companies are getting approved anymore. I think there was some data from John Shiraka's company that something like 60 companies had been approved in all of 2025, some crazy low number like that. So, you might as well, right? If you're going to wait months and months, you might as well just, if it's fairly inexpensive for you to do so, put in your application. But I wouldn't expect to get a response from SBA, partially because of the 8A audit, but also because some of the resources within SBA, first of all, a lot of people have taken retirement or taken the fork, but also they've been shifted away from 8A as well.
Yeah. Good guidance there. Of course, is there any estimate for when SOUP or CIOSP4 would start their move? Is it worth trying to get those schedules right now or just wait? Now, we do have Jeff from GSA coming up
Yeah.
on Thursday. He might be the best one to know when the moves, but do you have any insights?
I'd love to hear his answer. I think the executive order gave GSA the ability to do it within 90 days. So it could have happened last year.
Yeah.
But I imagine, that's a lot of work, as we mentioned, billions of dollars that would move from
Mhm.
one agency to another. There's a lot of agencies that use those contracts. So uh, I imagine GSA is not ready for that transition quite yet. They're still working through getting over SBA and OPM, which are two fairly small agencies. Taking over
Mhm.
Super CIOSP is a huge, huge undertaking. But yes, I would ask that question to Jeff as well.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. And then, well, is there an estimate? Okay, would start the movie, do that. Is there any discussion about the U.S. Navy Seaport and next gen MAC contracting for engineering services being taken over by GSA?
I have not heard that, and I think part of the reason is because if it is, outside of IT, GSA doesn't even have that industry specific knowledge. I mean, I think the reason that they're talking about SOUP and CIOSP is at least GSA has the IT 70 or what used to be called the IT 70 schedule. They have STARS and VETs, which are IT contracts. So they at least have domain specific knowledge. The only place where you would see engineering services on GSA would be through the schedule, but also on the Oasis contract. But there's a lot of other stuff on Oasis. So if that were to happen, that would be years and years down the road.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Do you think that the maps is still start to give agencies to have their own vehicles? Do you think with maps it's give agencies their own vehicles?
Well, will agencies get their own vehicles? The preference is that agencies don't make their own vehicles, that they use GSA. And I think you've seen that. I think DHS canceled one of its vehicles so that it would say, they're gonna use GSA rather than use their existing uh, DHS vehicle. So at least for this cycle, the idea is agencies stop creating their own vehicles, no new
Mhm.
uh, DHS type vehicles and use the existing GSA vehicles.
Okay. And then on vehicles here, do you have any insight about the impact of Oasis Plus, such as expectations of significant opportunities moving to that vehicle?
That's a really insightful question. So I've heard this as well, that there's all this talk about Oasis Plus. Everybody's got to be on Oasis Plus. There's a big fight to get on Oasis Plus, lots of protests. And then now that we're in Oasis Plus, there's just not as much work on it as you thought. Or if there is work, it's going
Mhm.
to big companies rather than small businesses. Uh, the data shows that that's definitely the case. The amount being spent through these government-wide contracts is down for 2025. So if you spend a lot of money to get on Oasis Plus, you probably are disappointed in what you've been getting on that. Will that change? I think if GSA put a huge investment into Oasis Plus, they want it to be successful. It really depends on whether agencies move their contracting to GSA. It's part of that consolidation effort. If agencies move their contracting to GSA, GSA itself will likely use its own vehicle, Oasis Plus. Oasis Plus is the one vehicle that is outside of IT, so GSA will use that. But if agencies decide not to use GSA, they probably will decide not to use Oasis Plus too, because it's kind of unproven as to whether it's going to be successful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait and see there. As a service disabled veteran-owned small business, what are the best ways to leverage our GSA schedule with existing partners and attract new contract opportunities?
Yeah, we've seen that the government's not meeting that goal. So using your certification status was not as successful in 2025 as it had been in the past. Maybe that'll change. I mean, one of the things is like I know I'm not working in a vacuum. So once I start talking about the fact that the government didn't meet its goal, maybe the government will make more efforts to meet the
Yeah.
goal, and so your certification status will become more valuable. I mean, another thing to think about is to use a special GSA authority called contractor team arrangements or CTAs. That's something specific to the GSA schedule where you can partner with another company that's on the schedule and you can form a contractor team arrangement and you perform BPAs together, you perform orders together, and you kind of switch off back and forth between you and your partner
Mhm.
on who takes the work on one order versus another. But the nice thing is because you're in that contractor team arrangement, you can probably get credit for both of the team members' past performance, or you can have more than two. You can take credit for all the members' past performance when you're bidding on an order or a BPA.
Yeah, yeah, good advice. I think we talked about this already. Do you recommend 8A, veteran-owned small business, minority business certifications? Are they still going to be seen as valuable um,
Well, the
to?
the trend seems to be kind of away from certifications, but
Mhm.
that's sort of a policy trend. And what I'm seeing in this data is the policy doesn't really trump the circumstances. The big part of this is what authorities do you get with that certification? 8A comes with fast track sole source authority. SDVO comes with sole source authority at the VA. Now, some of the other ones, MBE, DBE, those are under attack in the courts. Agencies at the state level are needing to review all of their DBE companies. So I definitely research the specific certification before you put any investment in it. But if it's fairly simple for you, then go ahead. There's really nothing to be lost if you can just
Yeah,
grab
yeah,
the certification.
yeah. There's no harm. and only an
Right.
upside. Yeah,
No, I don't
yeah,
think so.
yeah. There was one here about the fee to do business with GSA. Is the fee included with the award or is it deducted from the award?
It is collected by GSA after the fact. So when you sign your GSA schedule, you sign a clause that says that GSA will come to you periodically, maybe it's every 6 months or so, to collect your IFF and what you do, that industrial funding fee. So what you do is you have to report to GSA how much did you make through the GSA schedule, and then you hand over 0.75% to GSA. Some agencies will allow you to include that as a CLIN, a separate contract line item on your contract. So it's like a separate dollar amount. And essentially that means that the agency is paying for and passing it through to you. But if the agency doesn't do that, then you have to take it out of your award after the fact. It's kind of like just paying taxes. You're getting the money in at one point, and then every once in a while, the government comes to you and asks for its cut.
Yeah, good, good. Can you repeat where you can get the detailed Doge info? You mentioned
Yeah,
company
maybe I can
in
type this
Washington.
answer in. I'm going to try to type the gentleman's name again.
Okay.
Ben
Yeah,
Brunges on LinkedIn,
great.
University of Washington professor. Okay. So I just put Ben's name into the chat. But Ben Brunges is a professor at the policy school at University of Washington, and he
Hmm.
does research into federal procurement. And for the past year, he's been doing a lot of research into the Doge terminations and how they have been affected in different industries, different agencies. He's been putting out a lot of good content on LinkedIn about that.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Here's another question. I see contracts on the schedule for fixed amounts. Are those contracts for service rendered, or is it an amount that is for the potential of services that can be rendered?
Primarily, when you're seeing data reported, it's before the services have been performed. That's part of the reason that there's this weird $20 billion gap in that 8A chart that I showed.
Yeah. Hmm.
The agency books the money before it actually gets the work. And in some cases, the agency walks that back. And I think you can see it on GovCon Intelligence when I put it up there. It's about $19 billion that I think will get walked back by the State Department in 8A. So to answer that question, it's primarily before the work is rendered when you're seeing those amounts.
Yeah, it's the word amount. And then as a service disabled veteran owned small business, where can I find opportunities to bid on jobs? He's noting here that you already probably mentioned it, but I got on late. Where's a good place to go search?
Yeah, I mean, the main route is sam.gov for specific contracts. The VA does use sam.gov a lot. And then if you do have a schedule, then you can go to GSA eBuy to look up opportunities for GSA. I'll say there are a lot of consultants or service providers out there that will also help you find opportunities. So if you're interested in spending some money on that, there's a lot of people that will take your business.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, this is a good, if on GSA schedule and you make no money, that will the government come to collect a fee or are you still required to pay a fee? How does that fee
You
get?
you are not required to pay a fee since it's a percentage. So, just like taxes, if you made no money, you don't pay any taxes. But there is a requirement to make a minimum amount on the GSA schedule to avoid termination or decline of your option. I think it's like $25,000 or maybe 35. It's probably $25,000. So you have to make that amount in order to have GSA extend your GSA schedule. And for a while, GSA was not enforcing that. They were not terminating companies that did not make that amount, but they've started to end the contracts or terminate the contracts if you don't make that amount. So there's some strategies that you can use to make sure that you get that minimum amount to be able to stay on the GSA schedule. But just think that, because I made no money, I'm in good shape because I don't have to pay the fee. Well, there's other things that will happen to you as well.
Yeah, yeah. Always good to make money. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, even if you pay that 0.75, you're
No
still getting
downside to
some money
make.
into your
Yeah.
pocket.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, I think we got to the long list of great questions. Oh, wait, one more popped up. Wait a minute. It seems there is a cottage industry that says you need us to get jobs. When you make, let me see. It seems there is a cottage industry that say you need us to get jobs. I'm not sure. what that question, when you say you make the amount, is that profit or sales? Oh, so this is a
That's
follow-up to
sales.
that other question. When you say make the amount, is that profit or sales? Big difference.
Yeah, that's almost certain that's sales.
Yeah.
Somebody can
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's
I
sales.
don't think
And the
I,
reason it's sales is
yeah.
that's what is reported in the contract database.
Mhm.
Uh, GSA doesn't have insight into what your profit is. That's going to be an internal thing. Maybe you report that on your taxes. But GSA can just look at the contract and say, okay, this is what the sales are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think we caught up. Yep. Sales. Everybody's saying sales, sales, sales. What strategies do you suggest for achieving minimum revenue? I mean, that is a real thing.
Yeah, I feel free to contact me outside of this. I don't want to
Yeah.
give away the secrets to
Yeah.
everybody, but
Yeah.
there's some, as you've seen, I have a lot of access to data. I really like looking at data, and so one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I've done is look at some of the data on how you can get some minimum sales on the schedule. It's a bit. I have to think about it for service able vet firms. When I was thinking about it previously, it was for 8A firms, but I think
Mm-hmm.
there's some strategies service able vet firms can use as well.
And in some of the upcoming sessions, we'll do a deeper dive on that as well.
Great,
So
very
hopefully
good.
you'll be able to get some additional insights on that. Can you please note the importance of adding SIN codes on your GSA schedule? I know we'll be covering that in session 3, a lot on SIN codes, some of the practical and tactical, on schedule. So stay tuned on that. Will there be a recording available? Yes, there will be at the end of the 4 sessions. This is session 1. We have 3 more. Sam really kind of set the stage for, where we've been, where we are, where GSA perhaps is going um, and, are we back to the future? Here at GSA. And one thing my experience has been, Sam, that the pendulum never stops in the middle.
All right, we're always on one end or the
So,
other. That's
or,
a great observation.
and,
No question.
and hopefully, you'll catch it where you need it, for you. But the pendulum is swinging and will it swing back, right? So thank you so much. It was a great presentation, great Q&A session, and I'm seeing all kinds of positive, feedback and thank you so much. I think the
Yeah.
topic really resonated with everyone. Here, there's just tremendous appreciation for your service to small business success and your continued service there. And thank you for sticking around to answer all these questions. But before we wrap up, I wanted to remind everyone again about the slides. You'll get them at the end. And in just a moment, you'll see a brief anonymous survey pop up on your screen. And we'd be so grateful if you could um, complete the survey. We find it most helpful as we're building future programs to continue to improve them to better serve you. And it means a lot to our SBA partners as well. Um, and what's next? Now, here's what you don't want to miss. I alluded to the fact that this is the first of 4 sessions. Next up is session 2 on Thursday. January 8th. Same time, same place. We're bringing you Jeff Kosis. He's a senior procurement executive at GSA, and he's going to share his perspectives on the FAR overhaul. This is a very rare opportunity to hear directly from GSA leadership on changes that will impact how you do business. Trust me, you'll want to be there. And we're not stopping there. Over the next few sessions, you'll hear from also Jacelyn Ferris with Aprio, and I mentioned she's going to share tactical engagement with GSA schedules during session 3, which is a week from today. Again, same place, same time. And then session 4 is scheduled for that following Thursday with Brian Friel from BD Squared, who will provide a roadmap to growth with GSA and GWAX. A lot of talk today about GWAX. Can't wait to hear that, Brian. Each session builds on the last, which will give you a complete picture on how to leverage GSA for your business growth going forward. So, And here's one more opportunity. We've added an additional webinar. It's not part of the GSA. It is not a GSA focused topic, but it's a very important one, very relevant one now. It's on CMMC, and we're going to host that one on Thursday, January 22nd from 11, again, same time, same place, 11 to 12:30. And it's a special session on conquering CMMC. How do you stay compliant and competitive? This is not part of, as I mentioned, the GSA series, but it's incredibly relevant to you if you're working in the defense industrial base or planning to pursue DoD contracts. We've talked about CMC in the classroom. We've hosted webinars through the years. It's here. Now you really have to embrace this and understand it if DoD is going to be your customer or is your customer. And we'll be um, joined by cyber technology and privacy experts from Cone Resnick. We'll break down what you need to know to stay compliant and competitive in today's cybersecurity landscape. Registration is now open for that webinar, so make sure you sign up. This is one you don't want to miss either. So in closing, thank you so much for joining us today. Your questions were thoughtful and engaging, and we're grateful to the SBA and to Sam Lee for making this session possible. Session 1 is in the books, and we can't wait to see you this Thursday for session 2 with Jeff Kosis from GSA. Have a great couple of days. Be well, and we'll see you on Thursday at 11 o'clock. Thank you.